someone was asking, and you know who you are, for me to make a video on the OneD&D project that Wizards of the Coast is doing. The totally not 5.5 edition. Yep, we're all buying that. So here's my basic thoughts. And like, if you don't got time for the whole video, this is the sum up. It's a cash grab. There's nothing of value here. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Early on, there were some people who had hope. Shame on them for having hope. There was like certainly a possibility space where you think, surely, given 10 years of experience, Wizards of the Coast is aware of the problems with 5th edition, and this is their opportunity to fix them in a scrubbed up new version of 5e. And certainly it was their opportunity. But you know what happens sometimes with opportunities? Sometimes you miss them. Sometimes you waste them. And this certainly is one of those. But even more, because it's not even like they tried and failed. They didn't try, because OneD&D was never about improving 5th edition. Now, there are some improvements that happen, but I would posit that those are coincidental to the overall goal, which is to sell another set of core books. Some of the rules are being polished up so they are a little bit clearer. Some classes are getting much needed buffs. It's not enough, but they're getting, something. Something's better than nothing, right? But even it's very clear from what they're doing that they have no idea what's wrong with 5th edition, or have just absolutely, a shockingly zero interest in fixing it. Spellcasters still dominate. Marshals are still drowning. There aren't enough differences. I'm scratching my head on why you would even buy these books if you already have the 2014 books. The 2024 books, what new do they offer? Slightly changed classes, slightly updated wording on the rules. These are extremely minor. And I guarantee you, they're going to be selling these books for $60 to $70 each. Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and DMG. The DMG is going to have Bastions in it, which is kind of this... Man, I don't want to call it half-baked, because it did just come out, it's the very first phase of playtesting with Bastions. But, it's not a great idea. It's not even that it's not a great idea, because, giving the party, a base of operations or, a business to run, that's great. That should be a rule that exists. But it's just not significant. It's something that any DM can come up with. And, is Wizards of the Coast going to have, really outstanding rules? Do they have a track record of coming up with really outstanding rules for this kind of stuff? They don't. So I expect it to be more polished up by the time it comes out to release. I don't expect it to be great. It's certainly not worth the price of buying an extra DMG. Especially when you consider that, aside from, magic items, what are you buying the DMG for? The 5th edition DMG is just not great in terms of giving the DM tools with which to run the game and to create a campaign. And a lot of DMs, so here's a little aside. I used to be under the impression that most DMs made their own content. They wrote their own campaigns from scratch for the party every time. I am discovering, as my exposure to the D&D community increases, that is not actually as common as I thought. Most DMs run modules. Who knew, right? And so, a lot of those rules are going to be useless for those DMs, because, they're not making their own monsters. They're not making their own campaigns. So, it's not that the DMG is completely useless, because it has information. Okay, so... in concept, in principle, you want the DMG to have information for creating campaigns, for creating monsters, for creating magic items, for doing the things that the module isn't, that like, either if they're not running a module, then they can create these adventures for themselves. You want them to be mathematically rigorous. You want them to be well balanced. Basically, you're telling the DM, all right, here's our math. Here's how we figure this stuff out. And now you can do the same. But 5e is not built on good, solid mathematical foundations. So what good is the advice in the DMG? They also recently said that the math for creating monsters that's in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide is not the math that they used in the Monster Manual or in any of these subsequent versions of these monsters. So why would I buy another DMG? Why would I buy another Monster Manual? Are monsters going to change significantly? We have seen a shift in the design philosophy of monsters from 2014 till now. There's a few different things that have shifted. The way that monsters interact with spells. They go from spell slots to being able to cast each spell a certain number of times a day, which is not spell slots, which interacts somewhat with the new version of Counterspell in interesting and perhaps counterintuitive ways. And then also monsters that did magic damage with their physical attacks have started doing force damage. Instead of just saying their attacks count as magical, now it actually changes damage types to force, which is problematic when you have classes that that are supposed to resist physical damage and they don't resist force. Barbarian. So there's a lot of problems. There's arguably as many problems with OneD&D as it stands now as there is with the 2014 books as they are written, with the core 5e game. It's not that they don't fix any, it's that they are introducing new problems as they are fixing them. Because they don't fix very many problems. They're not adding very many problems, to be honest. Like, if you are a brand new player, you don't have the 2014 books, sure, pick up the 2024 books. Might as well get the most up-to-date thing. But, like, this is not for existing players. And this actually kind of continues a general philosophy of Wizards of the Coast when it comes to their Dungeons & Dragons brand. They're always looking to the new players, the players who haven't bought in yet. This is why they, I don't know have I made a video on this before? I believe the reason why they don't put out very much content as far as like new classes, new feats, new races, things like that. Like they'll come out with like one book every couple of years on average. There's very little player content for 5e. The reason for this is because we're keeping player content minimal helps reduce the barrier to entry. If you have a lot of content and a lot of what I would call splat book glut, which is not easy to say, then it makes the game more inaccessible. It makes it a little more opaque. You know, you walk into this brand new game you don't know anything about. There's a stack of books with options. And like, there's too many options. I don't know what to do. By keeping the amount of player content at its baseline, they've kept the game accessible to new players. This is a thing that has happened regardless of whether or not it was their intent. I think it was their intent. Because Wizards of the Coast actually is very good at marketing. And this is a marketing decision. You want to keep it accessible to new players so that you get people buying in. But unfortunately, this comes at the cost of supporting existing players, which they don't seem to be all that interested in doing. The amount of content expansion that has gone into 5e is extremely minimal. It's about what you would see in like 1 year of production in previous editions. And that's stretched over the course of 10 years. So, making the OneD&D books, the 2014 core books, basically just like a new entry point rather than an expansion or a patch to 5e makes a lot of sense with regards to their game plan thus far. So if you are an existing D&D player, I say it's not worth your time. It's certainly not worth your money. I would not bother with it. I'm in a slightly different position than that because I had already decided to stop playing 5e before the OneD&D was announced. And I thought, you might get me back. But then I looked at the playtest and saw, oh, you are doing nothing to fix any of my grievances. So no, this is not the salvation that the game needs. This is just a cash grab. And I do not use that word lightly. I think that too many things get called cash grabs that are not. But I really do genuinely think that they're putting in the absolute minimum effort they think they can get away with in order to sell more books. Because everyone's already got the books. You know, what happens when everyone who plays RPGs already has your game? They're not buying more. So make something else that they can buy. I think that's what they're after. OneD&D is a cash grab and a waste of time. And I would implore you not to buy it. I actually think it would be better for the franchise overall in the long run if OneD&D is a complete flop. And I'm not saying this because I was like, oh, Wizards of the Coast should get hurt, you know, give them a bloody nose. That'll show them. No, I think the bloody nose of having OneD&D flop and be a financial failure is what they actually need in order to get their act together and start innovating and start designing and start treating it like a game and not like a platform for selling merch. You know, they haven't treated D&D like a game since, well, pretty much since Mike Mearls took over, I would say. That's about the timeline in my head. Which would be 2012, I want to say. Could be wrong about that. Yeah. They haven't treated it like a game. They've treated it as like an intellectual property that people are going to eat up no matter what the product is. And some have kind of been proven right, to be honest. Like, you think about all the problems that 5e has. It's a genuinely bad game, but because it has the D&D name on it, it sells. And does it sell because does it sell for the game part? I would argue it does not. I would argue it sells because it has the D&D name on it. You know, that's what Critical Role plays. That's the game that they mentioned in Stranger Things. D&D will sell on the basis of D&D. That is changing. That is in the process of changing right now as we speak. It's not gone all the way. There are absolutely people who are going to be buying OneD&D just because it's D&D. Either for collection purposes or completionist purposes or, you know, brand loyalty, or maybe they just don't play other games and so they don't know any better. Maybe they don't even know what the product is. Like, oh, they see new D&D books, can grab those. But it is starting to change. That's not as prevalent as it was 10 years ago. And I think best case scenario is that people get wise to this idea that Wizards of the Coast is trying to scam them, basically, by trying to resell an edition that they sold 10 years ago. And if that happens, maybe they will get their act together. Maybe they will hire some reasonable designers. Jeremy Crawford is not a designer. He's an editor. Let's be clear about that. He didn't make 5th edition. He inherited it, so I don't blame him for 5th edition, but he does not have the design chops to do what needs to be done with it, which is why we are in the state that we're in with OneD&D, where it's not really being changed. It's just being sort of shuffled around a bit, clarified, repackaged, polished up, and sent out as a new product. So I don't blame Jeremy Crawford for 5e being what it is. I don't even think I can blame him for not fixing it, because I don't think, if I'm understanding the situation correctly, I don't think he had much of a choice in this. Like, he didn't ask to be the lead, like the Dungeons and Dragons head creator, whatever his, I forget what his actual job title is. As far as I'm aware, he didn't ask to be there. He just sort of inherited it when Mike Mearls got fired. I've heard he still works at Wizards of the Coast, but that's rumors. So I can't really blame him for it. But like it's a situation that's got to change. And I don't think it's going to change as long as they are meeting their sales quotas. So I'll sit back and wait and see if this is a problem that solves itself. Maybe it will. I would say the odds are against it. I think OneD&D is going to sell well enough because the environment is not yet turned entirely against Wizards of the Coast, despite all the shenanigans that they've pulled this year with the OGL and the Pinkertons and just the whole business. Like, it is not yet clear to people that Wizards of the Coast needs to have their attitude adjusted. Maybe the next time they try to do this in 2D&D, maybe. We'll see.